Here with me, I have Mr. Farid Sayed and Comrade Azad Seedat. Let me introduce them to you. Farid Sayed is the founder and editor of Muslim Views newspaper in South Africa. As a journalist and activist during the anti-apartheid struggle and beyond, he has written extensively on Imam Khomeini and the Islamic Revolution, especially in the build-up and during the 1980s. And Comrade Azad Seedat, politician in the African National Congress, ANC, social activist within the South African Communist Party, SACP, as you see the SACP sign on his jacket, and regional coordinator of the Ahlul Bayt Foundation of South Africa, AFOSA, and a chairperson of the Imam Hussein Mosque in Durban. Welcome to both of you, and thank you for being here with us.
Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you.
Yeah. Let me start with Mr. Sayed. Mr. Sayed, what is your take on how Imam Khomeini influenced the anti-apartheid struggle amongst youth and the students' movement in South Africa?
Yes, indeed. I think we can just go back a couple of years, maybe a year before the Islamic Revolution, looking at about 1978. Messages were coming through from people in exile. There was an organization called the MSA, Muslim Students Association in the US, PSG. And, you know, I used to receive their newsletters and, publications. And I got in touch with them, and they actually represented PSG, stood for the Persian-speaking group of Muslim students in the USA. And they had already, at that time, made contact with the revolutionary leadership that was in exile, particularly the religious leadership. And that is when I first heard of Imam Ayatollah Khomeini, in really the remarkable personality that he was. And so what we did was we started publishing, writing articles about the Imam's time in exile, Kuwait, and then in France. And along the way, we had the student movement in this country, particularly those involved in the anti-apartheid struggle. And it cut across the board. It wasn't just Muslim students, but obviously the Muslim students saw in Imam Khomeini a revolutionary direction that the established religious leadership in this country was either unable to provide or failed to provide that. And so here was this figure, a religious figure, who spoke from Quran and who spoke about the example of the Prophet ﷺ, and it appealed to the Muslim students because they were involved in the struggle and they needed direction. And I must mention at this stage that this message of Imam needed a catalyst. It needed a catalyst in this country. So it wasn't in a vacuum where people read about Imam Khomeini. And of course, you must remember it was television and radio was controlled by the apartheid regime. So the only access was alternative publications, and Muslim News, which was the predecessor of Muslim Views, was one of them. But there were other publications as well by the Muslim Students Association as well, newsletters by them as well. And the catalyst on the ground, and I'm speaking here for Cape Town, we had in my mind two people stand out. One was Imam Ibrahim Davis, who was the Imam at the Al Jamia Masjid in Stegman Road, Claremont. And I'll come back in a moment to the significance of that particular masjid. And the other person was Imam Ahmed Qasim, who was the leader of Qibla at that time. And, you know, so these were two people who were able to articulate the revolutionary message of Imam Khomeini. So Imam Khomeini's message, while it was an internationalist one, standing up against the imperialist superpower, the United States of America, and of course also speaking very openly and speaking truth to power when it came to the communist bloc as well. But we had to internalize that message here in South Africa. And the fact that we had revolutionary leadership among the youth, and we had Imam Ibrahim Davids based at Al Jamia, and I want to mention Al Jamia in particular. That was the masjid where the late Shaheed Imam Harun was the Imam, and it was always a revolutionary platform. And at that time, the Imam who took up that message was Imam Ibrahim Davids, and the other person who regularly spoke on the platform at Al Jamia was Imam Ahmed Qasim. So one finds a kind of a symbiotic relationship between what Imam Abdullah Harun stood for. There was immediately a resonance when Imam Khomeini, his revolutionary ideas, a religious figure, if we want to describe him as such, Imam Harun, probably 10 years before, had that same appeal to the youth. And if you look at the history of our struggle and as far as the Muslims are concerned in South Africa, and again particularly Cape Town, that religious leadership was lacking. So Imam Harun came onto the scene, martyred in 1969, but that spirit was still alive. And it was almost a fate, or it was meant to be. The timeline was 10 years later, 1979, Imam Khomeini emerges. The final point I want to make is the political movements at that time, and they were in exile, the African National Congress, the PAC, but I can speak for the PAC, for example, because there was a close relationship between some of the people that we had worked with. And again, and here I want to point out to how Imam Khomeini's message went beyond just the Muslims. I've been emphasizing about the religious leadership, which is very important, but I think it's also important to emphasize that Imam Khomeini's message was one that the movements, the liberation movements, were able to take on. And here I can speak about the Pan-Africanist Congress, the Black Consciousness movement, and where we looked at Imam Khomeini and Imam Harun having that kind of resonance towards each other. People also saw, for example, Robert Sobukwe, Mangaliso Robert Sobukwe, was one person that stood out, this intellectual giant. And so we find that the message of Imam Khomeini was not just restricted to the Muslim community, it was not this religious leader for Muslims, it went beyond that. And it was, so we had Imam Khomeini as that figure, with a revolutionary ideology, but there were people here on the ground who were able to take that on and articulate it. So the impact of Imam Khomeini on the anti-apartheid struggle was a profound one, a deep-rooted one. Of course, along the way, people tried to divert attention from that role by bringing up all other sort of sectarian issues, etc. Imam Khomeini's appeal went beyond sectarianism. It was a revolutionary message, and I think when it comes to the Muslim student movement in particular, they found in Imam Khomeini where a leadership and a direction which unfortunately either was people failed to provide it or were unable to provide it. And then I also acknowledge those people like Imam Ibrahim Davids and Imam Ahmed Qasim, amongst others, who were able to articulate that revolution.
Thank you, Mr. Farid. What you have told support the idea that ideology of Imam Khomeini is international and wide as the globe. So in any other part of the world, you can find people who following his ideas, and so many good revolution happened by his ideology. Thank you so much. Now let's have Comrade Seedat. What's your take, sir?
Hi, thank you, Comrade. Basically, what has happened is I got involved at a very young age. I was a student activist in the liberation struggle here in South Africa. At the age of 13, I joined the Phoenix Action Committee, and we worked together with the Natal Indian Congress, because these were the organizations that were active in the community at that time, because the ANC and Communist Party and PAC and all other organizations were banned. So I started at an early age, and around about 1980, after the Islamic Revolution of 79, while I was at school, I had a beard in school, so kids used to tease me. They used to call me the Ayatollah, and I never really knew who the Ayatollah was. But nevertheless, be it as it may, my parents, both my mother and father, were both listed communists. They both been into prison. They served prison sentences, hard labor in prison. And what had happened was in 1982, my mom went to Mecca to perform the Hajj. When she was on Hajj, there she met the Iranian comrades. And she was very impressed with the slogans that were being chanted, like, death to America, death to Israel, and death to imperialism, even death to communism too. But be that as it may, she said that, when she saw this anti-imperialist struggle of the Iranian Hujaj, she realized that, something was lacking in South Africa and something was lacking within the Islamic body in South Africa, because this was not, when they grew up in South Africa, there was nothing about Islam in South Africa, basically. It was just basically rituals. And seeing the mass demonstrations in Makkah of the Iranians, she was very impressed. And when she came back to South Africa, she came home, she told me, Azad, I want you to do me one favor. Stop wasting your time now with all these activities and go and study this Islamic revolution and get that message across, because that is the future of the struggle. So what I did was, immediately after she informed me, I then made inquiries. I said, you know what, I need to get in touch with people from Iran regarding the Islamic revolution. So in 1982, I set about trying to get in touch or get hold of the Islamic Republic in South Africa. And then a good friend of mine introduced me to the Iranian cultural intersection in Johannesburg. That was in 1982. I made contact with the embassy, and the embassy used to send me all the publications, Echo of Islam, Majuba, and those kind of magazines. And the more I learned about Imam Khomeini and the similarity between the Imam's message and the message that we were doing, and the struggle of ours in South Africa, I found that both these ideologies kind of synchronize. And over the years, people were confused with me. They said, are you a communist or are you a Khomeiniist? Because you can't be a communist and follow Khomeini also. It's a contradiction. So I said, listen, there's no contradiction, because the Communist Party in Iran, like the Communist Party in South Africa, they also were given the same opportunity that the Communist Party in South Africa was given. During the course of the uprising and the student unrest in Iran preceding the Islamic Revolution, we acknowledge that the Communist Party, the Tudor Party, also played an important role in mobilizing workers in Iran. Imam made it quite clear to them before the revolution, before the referendum, that listen, you are part of the Iranian people, you are part of the struggle, and we need you to contribute. But obviously, the Tudor Party, being influenced by the Soviets, thinking that they are the vanguard party and they want to create mischief, they started terrorizing the people in Iran with all the terrorism, blowing up the parliament, and this is completely condemned. As a communist, I say I condemn that action of those communists. They are stupid to do that, because they do not understand. They could not conceptualize the message of the Islamic Revolution. The Islamic Revolution is a socialist revolution. This is why today you look around the world, who are the friends of Iran? Venezuela, Bolivia, Vietnam, North Korea, China, Russia. These countries, the socialist countries, are all friends of Iran. All these communist, were previously communist states, now socialist states. Why have they gravitated towards Iran? Why has Iran finally become the leader of all these people? Because they have understood the message of Iran. They now understand that the revolution of Imam Khomeini is the same revolution what they've been struggling for. The message of Imam Khomeini, the message of the Islamic Revolution, the message of Imam Hussein is the same message that the poor communists have been trying to implement. It's the same goal, same objectives. And we believe, me personally, I believe that, as communists believe that the world of communism can only be implemented once the entire world is socialist. And as we say that we are the followers of Imam Mahdi alayhi salam, when he appears and he establishes justice in the world, that's when you'll see, basically you'll get the taste of true communism when the Imam is here. And these are the important things. Now, look at Nelson Mandela. Being a comrade, when he came to Iran, when he addressed the Imam, he said, "My leader." Now, some people say that, you know what, in the ANC, when we address people as leader, it's a common term that we use, that, you know, we address everyone as my leader. That's not true. You only address someone as a leader in the movement who you feel that, you know what, I acknowledge this person as a comrade and I acknowledge him to be one superior to me. Someone that's working harder than me, and I address him as a leader. We don't use the term misused. I don't know where some people have the concept, but, you know, leader, we just use it, you know, in general. It's not the case. A leader is someone that you admire and you respect, and you give him the title of leader. And Nelson Mandela, he had great love for the Islamic Revolution in the Islamic Republic of Iran. And I am proud to say that I facilitated the meeting of the ambassador Mahdavi to get Nelson Mandela to visit Iran in 1999. I made sure that he visited Iran, and he was very happy with this invitation because these imperialists and these colonialists, they were still controlling DIRCO. The Department of Foreign Affairs was still infiltrated by these white Asians. And they blocked every attempt that we made in Iran to have this meeting with Mandela and to bring him to Iran. They were trying to block it. But alhamdulillah, I was able to, with my contacts, able to facilitate this meeting with the ambassador at that time, Sheikh Mahdavi, to make that arrangement so that we could get Mandela to go to Iran and visit Iran again for the second time. And basically, all I can say is that, look, the Islamic Revolution and the Islamic Republic of Iran and the people of Iran are courageous people. I wish that our people in South Africa can also emulate the people of Iran. Because every year, I mean, I visited Iran several times. And what I admire about the people in Iran, unlike here in South Africa, for example, on the 11th of February, when you have your independence celebration, you find millions of people walking hundreds of miles to Azadi Square in Tehran. In the winter, in the snow, they are coming. Whereas in South Africa, when we have our Independence Day, the state has to provide buses and transport, and you will do a whole lot of things. There's no patriotism, you know, there's nothing of that sort in South Africa. People don't really understand what revolution is all about. And it's important that they learn from Islamic Republic of Iran, and they learn from Imam Khomeini, and they learn from the people of Iran what it is to be independent. You know, it was nice that Mandela says that, you know, South Africa is a sovereign nation and we will not allow any nation to dictate to us. That's all good, you know, for public consumption. But the reality on the ground is something completely different. And our politicians here, our leaders here in South Africa need to wake up. They need to go to Iran. I don't know what the ambassador of South Africa does in Iran, but he needs to explain to them the progress that is in Iran. I was in Iran. I was surprised that my last trip to Iran was 2 years ago, and you find there's no poverty in Iran. You don't find beggars in the street, nothing. The problem that you had in Iran prior to the revolution, all the squatter camps, that has been eradicated. Why? Because you people have the Basiji, you have volunteers, people who are ready to do things selflessly. Not in South Africa. South Africans need to learn what it is to sacrifice and be selfless. Thank you.
Thank you, comrade. Yeah, as you told, the front against oppression is a united front. The name is not important. Yeah, that's it. Thank you, Mr. Farid Sayed. Thank you, Comrade Azad Seedat, for your presence, for your presentation in our program. All the best to both of you. Bye.